So the video you've all been waiting for, how to know your worth and set your rates. So the first thing we're going to talk about is knowing your worth and figuring out what you should be charging. Depending on the industry you're in, you can browse websites like Fiverr, Upwork, or Glassdoor to kind of gauge what other people in your industry and in your area are charging. I think for me personally though, some of the most valuable information that I gained regarding rates was just from talking to my other photographer friends. I thought it was very interesting how rates vary from city to city. Most photographers' rates are readily available on their website also, so if there's someone in your area that you admire and you're curious what they're charging, I would suggest just going to their website and seeing if their rate is on there and using that as part of your research. I think for me as a photographer, it was very important for me to talk to my other photographer friends about rates in the very beginning because I realized I was definitely selling myself short in some aspects because they just clued me in to so many things I never even thought of. For example, asking for per diem when you're on a long shoot day or when you're on tour, or asking for reimbursements for Ubers and equipment rentals and all of that. Knowing what you should be charging and knowing what else the client should be paying for is really helpful. And my last tip in terms of knowing your worth is to not settle for free or cheap work if you feel like it just doesn't really align with you or your vision. In the beginning, you're probably gonna have to do some stuff for free or cheap in order to build out your portfolio, gain experience, and hopefully build connections with a client. But as your business grows, my advice is to work with clients who are paying you your rate or more, and they value your time, they appreciate you, and the work aligns with who you are. And I no longer settle for clients who are really trying to undercut me with the budget or ask me to do more than my job, etc. So after doing some research, speaking to your friends, and seeing what is average for your industry in your area, it's time to decide on your rates. Now, your rate will definitely go up over time, especially in the past couple of years. A lot of photographers and videographers' rates have increased because of inflation, and I can only assume that's the same in other freelance industries. As a photographer, there's a couple of different ways you can do your rates. A lot of people do hourly rates or buy edited photo, like final photo rates. Or if you're like me, I have a day rate, and when I'm on tour, I have a weekly rate. Once you have your rate set, I highly recommend making a rate card. And what a rate card is just a cool one-sheeter that you can fire off to clients if they're looking to book you for a shoot. On my rate card, I have my hourly rate, my half day, my daily, and my weekly rates, along with how many edited photos come with each of those. And if you plan on including anything else, if you own a studio and you include studio space in that, just kind of laying out what the client is paying you and what the client is receiving. A lot of people make rate cards using Canva, but you can also just use kind of any graphic design software. I kind of make it look really nice. So when I email it out, it looks professional and cool. This information can also just be listed on your website, but it's handy to have in a PDF format if a client is just asking for it via email. Along with having rate info available, some people like to list their rates on their website and some people do not. I personally have my hourly rate listed on my website, just so if someone is looking to book me, they can kind of get a feel for okay, if I wanted to book her for 2 or 3 hours, it might cost this much, but they still do have to email me for my actual rate card. And whether you list your rates online or not is kind of up to you. There's no real industry standard in doing that, but I like to give at least some partial information so they kind of know what to expect. I think something that's also important to note is how to charge for kind of different projects or different types of clients. If I have a major Fortune 500 brand come to me and they want a huge project done and there's usage and exclusivity and a week-long shoot somewhere, obviously that is going to be much more than my normal rate. So other things that I factor in on my rate card are pricing for exclusivity, pricing for usage, pricing for travel, all of that. But those are just things that come up on a project by project basis. So it's also helpful to have people in your life who you can be like, hey, what do you think I should be charging for this if something really big like that comes your way? On the other end of the spectrum, sometimes you have clients come to you who cannot afford your rates and they're looking on how to maybe compromise on the budget. And if it's still a client you'd really like to work with, I don't think compromising on the budget is a problem at all. I would just kind of figure out what that budget is worth to you and what you would be okay with giving them in return for that amount. I've definitely made a lot of lower budget projects work in my time, and most of it was work that I actually ended up loving doing. And so that's just something to consider if a client comes to you with a budget that's lower than your rate and you're wondering whether you should take it or not. I hope some of this information was helpful to you guys in terms of knowing your worth and kind of figuring out your rates and what you need to charge for your services. I think as a freelancer, it's so important to have a discourse around money and rates and what you're making, just because it is something that you're essentially left to your own devices to figure out. And as a community, we should all be a little bit more open about this discussion. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning into these lessons. I really hope you learned something from this. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Blackprince. And if you have any more questions, I am more than happy to answer them. So please let me know.